Madam Secretary, you and the gentleman from NCTC reference the unfortunate accident that occurred with National Guardsmen being killed.
You think that was an unfortunate accident?
I mean,
It was a terrorist attack.
Wait. Look, I'll get it straight. Then you can
He shot our National Guardsman in the head.
Look,
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. That was a murder that took place in D.C. It was not an unfortunate incident. And those comments are effing disrespectful.
It's just some of the exchange that happened in a U.S. House committee yesterday in the aftermath of a National Guardsman being shot and killed and a second Guardsman that is recovering, but after getting shot in the head. Troops that were on the streets in Washington, D.C. helping with public safety, but you've got other use of the guard across the country, including here in Illinois, where the challenge still persists in courts, all around the idea of protecting federal personnel and assets in enforcing immigration law. This is Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. You can wake up with us each and every weekday morning for the live show, and you can catch segments of the show afterwards and get the podcast where you get podcasts. Just search Illinois in Focus. So if you go to thecentersquare.com, where you can get the newsletter, you'll see the headline, House Homeland Security hearing filled with tense exchanges with DHS Secretary Kristi Noem having some oversight questions from members of the House. But across the chamber over in the U.S. Senate, they were holding a hearing in the Senate Armed Services Committee about the use of the National Guard. And you have U.S. Senator Tammy Duckworth from Illinois sharing these thoughts.
I fear the day when Americans stop thanking our troops for their service because they're afraid of our troops. We know that this administration is trying to borrow the respected image of the military. Across the country, we've seen DHS agents dressing in camouflage and wielding military-style weapons. They're making it hard for Americans to tell the difference between abusive federal agents and professional troops. So let me tell you what is happening in Chicago. It is not ICE agents that are being attacked. ICE agents are the ones who tear gas over 24 Chicago police officers. ICE agents are the ones who tear gas toddlers. They are the ones pointing loaded weapons at unarmed bystanders, hauling preschool teachers from daycare in front of their kids, and rappelling from DHS helicopters onto apartment buildings in the dead of night to rip families from their beds and detain them for hours, and then when they go to court, had to admit that they have no basis to file any charges against those people they ripped out of that building in the middle of the night. That is the terror that is happening in Chicago. It is not ICE agents as the victims. It is the civilians of Chicago who are the victims of the ICE agents.
You know, one thing I've learned in covering policy and politics and the enforcement of laws, when they get involved in the judiciary, listen, things are not fully settled until, probably until it gets to the U.S. Supreme Court or until one side walks away. And that would leave the latest court ruling in place, right? Because you got the district courts that deal with things, then you've got the appeals court that deals with things, and then you've got the Supreme Court. That's the ultimate arbiter, right? So a lot of these cases where, some Democrats and some even Republicans at times do this as well, they will point to, courts have said, well, that might just be a lower court that's an appeals court ultimately overturned. So you can kind of just see how the court system can be used by the politician to point to, hey, my side's right on this, so says the court, but it may have just been a district level court. A lot of these things still at that level. When talking about the use of force, the use of the National Guard, and even the state's migrant sanctuary policies. These are some three major lawsuits that are, at least the use of force lawsuit that media groups and immigrant activists brought against the federal government. That has a dismissal hearing coming up, a dismissal motion that was made by the media groups that were suing the federal government. So the other two cases, though, still very much pending in court, one being the Trump administration suing the state of Illinois over its migrant sanctuary policies, and the state of Illinois actually expanding those. So I'll be interested to see if the Trump administration files an addendum to their lawsuit to say, look, they're doing more to impede federal immigration enforcement. So those lawsuits surely are going to continue to develop. But then you get into the issue of the use of the Guard, right? Because Donald Trump in October, as president, ordered the National Guard to be deployed in Illinois to protect federal agents and assets while they enforce immigration law. Because we saw on the streets protesters blocking official vehicles, protesters getting into clashes with federal law enforcement, state and local police in Illinois because of the migrant sanctuary policies not stepping in to protect federal agents. But eventually they did have to come in. You had Illinois State Police up in Broadview setting up parameters around the ICE facility in Broadview because protesters were getting unruly, and Trump said he's going to send the National Guard. He did eventually, but a federal judge, after the state sued, blocked it on preliminary grounds. And again, that on preliminary grounds up in the appeals court, and looking possibly even the U.S. Supreme Court getting involved on preliminary issues with the use of the Guard in Illinois. So Senator Duckworth talking about ICE terrorizing the communities in Chicago and pointing to a court saying, so says this court, just keep in mind there are multiple layers to that judiciary, and I don't think there's been a finality of whether or not justification was had to go into an apartment building, or justification was made to use of force, or if justification's there to bring in the National Guard. But U.S. Senator Eric Schmidt from Missouri, he talked about the rhetoric that Democrats are using in this space and how dangerous it is.
I think you've seen, there's no coincidence here, you've seen 1,000% increase in assaults on ICE officers. So to my Democrat colleagues who want to have this hearing, we got to be honest about what's actually happening out there. This rhetoric is making it open season on law enforcement. It's incredibly dangerous. So when we villainize ICE agents who have family members, who are husbands, who are mothers, who are simply enforcing the laws that this Congress, or not this Congress, but Congress has passed over the years, this is insane. And the condoning of people blocking off vehicles from, enforcing the law, these ICE agents, this is a powder keg. It's a powder keg. So let's not pretend that this is some constitutional crisis. The President of the United States has very clear authority to send them to protect federal buildings and to protect the law enforcement.
So, and that's what the court documents show, is that the Trump administration is sending in the National Guard into a state like Illinois because of the need to protect federal assets and federal troops and personnel enforcing immigration law. So that was in the U.S. Senate Armed Services Committee. Long hearing, a lot of back and forth, but that really seemed to be kind of, each side here is, the Democrats opposing the Trump administration's enforcement of immigration law, and Republicans saying that they're using the National Guard because of protests turning violent, and 1,000% increase on threats against federal officials. But then over in the House, you had this exchange between Democrat Mississippi U.S. Representative Benny Thompson, and then also others back and forth with Kristi Noem, DHS Secretary. Here is some of that exchange that happened yesterday as well in the U.S. House Committee on Homeland Security, and pretty heated, actually.
Madam Secretary, you and the gentleman from NCTC reference the unfortunate accident that occurred with the National Guardsman being killed.
You think that was an unfortunate accident?
I mean,
It was a terrorist attack.
wait. Look, I'll get it straight. Then you can
He shot our
respond.
National Guardsman in the head.
Look, Mr. Chairman, will you direct the witness to allow me to ask my question? It was an unfortunate situation, but you blamed it solely on Joe Biden. I want you to know who approved the asylum application for this same person.
Mr. Thompson, this individual that came into the country.
No, I want to know who approved.
Congressman Thompson, I want you to understand. When this individual came into the country, he came under
I'm not going to let you.
Evacuation of Afghanistan under Operation Allies Welcome, was thoroughly vetted by the Biden administration at that point in time, allowed into our country, and then was never followed up. I want to remind everybody in Congress.
Reclaim my time.
We follow the law. And every asylum is supposed to have a check-in every single year, and the Biden administration failed to do that. They vetted this individual, allowed them into our country, and did not do
The
due
witness will allow the gentleman to ask his question.
Yes or no? Who approved the asylum claim?
The application on the asylum was thoroughly filled out by information that was gathered by the Biden administration.
So the
His
Biden
asylum-
administration approved the
The
asylum.
asylum application was put into place under the rules established by the Biden administration.
Reclaiming my time. I don't want to file perjury charges against you, but I'm of the opinion that the Trump administration, DHS, your DHS, approved the asylum application.
The asylum application moved forward under all of the information and vetting processes that were put in place under the Biden administration, which is when vetting happened. And that's what President Trump has changed. Under President Trump's administration.
Reclaim my time again.
When
It's obvious you don't want to answer the question. Mr. Kent, you want a shot at it?
The individual was vetted to serve as a soldier in Afghanistan, and that vetting standard was used by the Biden administration as a ruse to bring him here. Had we followed the standard operating procedures for special immigrant visas,
Reclaim that.
that individual and none of the Allies Welcome people would have come to America. That's on Joe Biden.
Gentleman's
just
time has
answer the-
expired.
That was the answer.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman, that was a murder that took place in DC. It was not an unfortunate incident. And those comments are effing disrespectful.
Who is that?
I expect better from the
It's not a valid point of order.
So clearly, a lot of political rhetoric and finger pointing back and forth, and what that means to you, the taxpayers, paying for all of that. That show, by the way, means that not much by way of getting to some commonality of the use of the National Guard when it comes to protecting federal agents and assets from protesters that turn violent or possibly even terrorists while they're enforcing federal immigration law, especially in a state like Illinois that has migrant sanctuary policies in place. Again, that's why we do Illinois in Focus daily, keep you updated what's going on in and around the land of Lincoln. Go to thecentersquare.com and get the newsletter today.